In 2003, the famous stunt artist David Blaine spent 44 days without food, suspended in a transparent box above London.
I also didn't go to the bathroom for a month and a half. What?
Though Blaine's stunt pales in comparison to the Scottish man Angus Barbieri, who entered the Guinness Book of World Records in 1971 for surviving a year-long fast. So, what happened to Blaine and Angus? In this video, we'll take a look at what happens to the brain, organs, muscles, and hormones when you go without food for longer and longer. 12 hours to 2 days to a week, or even several months.
And as the weeks draw on, doctors say he's shown the first signs of starvation.
Fasting is really popular recently because of the huge health and cognitive benefits to be had from even 1 or 2 days of fasting. After a day of fasting, you start getting very high pulses in growth hormone levels throughout the next day. Your hunger hormone ghrelin also goes down. Over 48 hours of fasting, the protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which literally makes the brain grow, increases 3.5-fold. Over a 72-hour fast, the fat storage hormone insulin drops quite a bit. But fasting hype isn't new at all. More than 100 years ago in 1911, Upton Sinclair published a popular book called The Fasting Cure, where he reports on multiple miraculous health improvements from various people's multiple-day fasts, with some people fasting longer than a month. By 1972, the Soviets had developed what the LA Times called a cure for just about anything, eating nothing for 30 days. Some research has found fasting to significantly boost mood and be effective for anxiety and depression. So while David Blaine was sitting in that glass box with nothing to do, his body was doing a lot. After about 8 hours without food, his body would shift to mostly rely on the stored sugar or glucose stored in his liver for energy. And David would start to be getting pretty hungry. But he only has so much glucose stored in the liver to maintain his blood sugar. So what happens when he runs out? Well, I can actually find that out for myself by stabbing this thing into my arm. And then I'll eat nothing for 2.5 days. This thing on my tricep is called a continuous glucose monitor because it continuously monitors my glucose, my blood sugar. I've been fasting for about 63 hours now, so let's take a look at my blood sugar. Okay, so as you can see, my blood sugar while I was sleeping was relatively flat. But then around the time that I woke up, it went up a little bit, even though I haven't eaten anything. If we look at my blood sugar for the whole 64 hours I fasted, you can see it fluctuated a lot. Here it spiked up when I went to the gym. But it only takes about 28 hours to use up all the glucose stored in my liver. So where's this glucose coming from? One reason my blood sugar didn't go down and down to zero is because the body can make the small amount of glucose it needs. But wait a minute, this couldn't be good for my brain because it needs tons of energy. At the same time I was depleting my glucose stores, my body started to generate an alternative fuel source, ketones. Ketones are such a great source of energy for the body that when you're fasting, 2/3 of the brain's energy needs are met entirely by ketones. The other 1/3 comes from the glucose your body makes. Ketones are in fact considered to be the most energy-efficient fuel for our bodies, providing more energy per unit oxygen used. Considering the brain is the most energy-intensive organ, demanding 20% of the body's energy budget, more energy bang for your buck is great news. The interesting thing about these ketones is that they're not just a replacement fuel, but they're really beneficial to the brain. As mentioned before, after 48 hours of fasting, levels of the protein BDNF increased 3.5-fold. BDNF is a potent stimulator of growth in the brain. Dr. John Rady explains in his book Spark that when researchers sprinkled BDNF onto brain cells in a petri dish, the cells automatically started to grow and sprout new branches. This kind of structural growth is necessary for learning and essentially improves brain function.
BDNF, which I called miracle grow for the brain.
In fact, BDNF is associated with cognitive improvement and improvements in depression and anxiety. And this paper explains that a stimulator of BDNF release is ketone bodies. Here's a paper that looked at 1,422 people who fasted for 4 to 21 days. What's interesting is I think most people would be concerned about their mental or emotional state while fasting, suspecting a long fast would make them progressively more hungry and irritated, unfocused, or drained of energy. However, for over 1,000 people, emotional well-being significantly increased over 5, 10, 15, and even 20 days of fasting. So by day 5 in David Blaine's fast, he may have been feeling actually pretty good. Several people, myself included, have reported that sometime after day 4 and as early as day 3 of a fast, they feel especially focused and present with a lot of energy. This paper from before reports that sometime between days 2 and 7 of a fast, there is an improvement in depressive symptoms. People experience an improvement in mood, alertness, and even a sense of tranquility. This may be due to very high ketone levels. Normally in people not eating a ketogenic diet, ketones are quite low, most likely around 0.1 millimoles, but no higher than 0.5 millimoles. Mine, after a weekend of very unketogenic eating, are 0.1 millimoles. But as you fast, ketones will steadily rise. By day 5 of a fast, ketones peak, reaching as high as 7 to 10 millimole. Also by day 5, we should expect that David Blaine wouldn't have been hungry anymore, maybe even starting earlier than that. Going back to Upton Sinclair's book, The Fasting Cure, he explains that it is part of the natural course of longer fasts for hunger to disappear by day 3 or so. I've found this to be the case for myself as well. He also says depending on the person, it can take days or weeks for hunger to return. In fact, this study looking at 1,422 people fasting 4 to 21 days found that hunger disappeared for 93% of the people. This thing is a ketone ester. It's one of the worst things I've tasted. It's basically drinkable ketones. 2 things I've noticed from it. If I take enough, it increases my focus and mood a little bit like I had a cup of coffee. The other thing is it takes my hunger away for a little while. Ketones are an appetite suppressant. This paper found you can lower people's feelings of hunger by having them drink ketones in the form of a ketone ester, just like I did. Let's take a quick look at longer fasts. Going back again to the study on over 1,000 people fasting from 4 to 21 days, for 84% of the people who had health issues, those issues improved from the fasting. One study found that a patient essentially cured her diabetes with only 2 weeks of fasting. Another severely obese woman cured her diabetes with 4 weeks of fasting.
I'm cured.
Now, that woman did regain all the weight she lost. However, her diabetes stayed in remission for a year after that, suggesting fasting could have had some beneficial effects unrelated to the massive weight loss. Going back to the 1972 LA Times article, a man in it named Vladimir reported to have cured his arthritis with 45 days of fasting. But what happened to the healthy David Blaine? For David Blaine, it wasn't all miracles and ketogenic euphoria. He experienced heart palpitations, blurred vision, and backaches. Blaine lost a ton of weight during his fast, 24.5 kilos or 54 pounds, but according to the report published about Blaine in the journal Nutrition, 42.4% of that was muscle, and only 26.1% of that weight loss was fat. If you're going to fast as long as 44 days, you're going to lose some muscle, but if you wanted to lose as much muscle as possible, you'd probably want to fast in the same way David Blaine did. Not being able to move around has serious consequences for muscle. A 2016 study found that even when people were eating a proper diet with ample protein, simply subjecting them to strict bed rest for a week had them lose a ton of muscle mass. On the other hand, a 2017 study had men stop working out for 2 weeks, and simply allowing them to walk around prevented them from losing any muscle. Tim Ferriss wrote in his book Tools of Titans that during his first clinically supervised 7-day fast, they didn't let him exercise, and he lost 12 pounds of muscle. However, when following a fasting protocol designed to get him into ketosis as soon as possible, involving brisk walking for 4 hours, he claims to have lost 0 muscle mass on a 10-day fast.
Ketone?
As mentioned before, fasting raises growth hormone. Growth hormone decreases body fat, it increases bone density, and it helps you build up muscle. And ketones also protect your muscle from being broken down. A 1989 study found that simply injecting ketone bodies into people not only prevented proteins from being broken down, but the ketones increased protein synthesis. Both great things for muscle. Not every aspect of fasting is good for muscle though. IGF-1, a key factor in muscle growth, goes down and remains quite low over a 10-day fast. But if you're doing a fast, eating low carb before the fast and getting plenty of low intensity exercise throughout the fast should help you get into ketosis quickly and prevent you from losing much muscle. All this said, you can't just fast excessively long without consequences. According to a 1969 case report, a 20-year-old woman weighing 118 kilograms or 260 pounds did a 210-day fast. In the process, she lost 60 kilograms or 132 pounds, and she did survive a week of refeeding, but she went on to die of a heart attack after that. Before 1973, there had been at least 4 recorded cases of people who did fast longer than 210 days, but they did not have a heart attack like the 20-year-old woman. Perhaps these people had so much body fat that even after 210 days, they did not reach that drastic muscle tissue wasting phase. In fact, Angus Barbieri's 382-day fast was relatively uneventful, with the authors of his case report simply writing that prolonged fasting in this patient had no ill effects. Angus broke his fast with a boiled egg and a slice of bread, and told reporters, "I thoroughly enjoyed my egg and I feel very full." During the fast, Angus steadily lost weight at an average rate of about 3/4 of a pound or 1/3 of a kilogram per day, losing a total of 276 pounds or 125 kilograms. And what was huge was that he kept the weight off. His fast took him from 456 pounds down to 180 pounds. And 5 years after the fast, he still weighed only 196 pounds. This is really interesting because, on the other hand, many of the participants in the Biggest Loser TV competition who frequently lose over 100 pounds end up gaining back most or all of that weight.
If you want 5 minutes of fame and drastic weight loss that you'll never keep off, then join The Biggest Loser.
Scientists followed contestants from the TV show The Biggest Loser, and they found that when the cameras went off, the weight often came back on.
And within about 4 or 5 years, I'd put back on all the weight.
A study done on their physiology found that the intense exercise and caloric restriction that had them lose plenty of weight left them with an abnormally ravenous appetite.
Germanakos faced big challenges after returning home, telling Today, "I'm a morbidly obese person in a fit body. I'm hungry all the time."
Now, there's a phenomenon where when people lose weight, their hunger hormone, ghrelin, goes up, suggesting they become more hungry. But when you fast, ghrelin goes down. And it seems to be that ketone bodies are what prevent ghrelin from going up when you lose weight. In fact, this 1968 paper claimed that after 2 weeks of fasting, obese people were able to be completely satisfied with a diet of a mere 800 calories for another 2 weeks. It's probably not reasonable to expect to consistently have that much of a reduction in hunger, but this hunger-lowering effect may be thanks to reduced insulin. Dr. Robert Lustig says that insulin blocks your brain from picking up on the leptin signal. Leptin is a hormone that essentially makes you feel full.
And that's what's driving obesity. Insulin blocks leptin at the brain and makes you hungry. So the higher your insulin goes, the hungrier you get.
Dr. Lustig says that often in people with obesity, they have very high leptin levels, but that leptin signal is blocked by very high insulin levels. But when you fast, insulin drops a lot. So we should expect people to get full more easily after a fast. The beauty of fasting is it's so simple. If you're not sure how to do it, you can grab one of these instructional t-shirts in the description. If you've never fasted before or you're taking medications, take it slow and see what a professional has to say before you fast for many days at a time.